You know that person you really want to text but you haven't texted first because you want them to text you first? Don't play games, have conversations. So, with Jedi Survivor coming out this weekend, I thought it'd be a great time to recap what exactly is happening in the galaxy during this time period. You know, when Jedi Fallen Order came out, I was kind of in a minority camp because, I'm actually not really into these third-person platformers. I'll get through the Assassin's Creed games. I wasn't a huge fan of Tomb Raider or Prince of Persia back in the day. But despite all of that, I still really enjoyed Fallen Order's terrific story. The dialogue and voice acting was awesome, and of course the world building, because it's Star Wars, was something right up my alley. Being able to run around on planets like Kashyyyk, Dathomir, and even Elune was pretty cool. But because of the story requirements, this was after Order 66, the game really took us to pretty limited places that were mostly sparsely populated and in the wild and away from Imperials. Which is why I'm very excited to report that Jedi Survivor should be expanding the universe of this series to encompass an even more diverse set of planets for characters to visit, including my personal favorite, Coruscant. We just seem to be getting more and more of this very awesome Yoseminopolis in all of the new Star Wars content, and I definitely approve. Also, for those of you who are interested in getting your hands on a replica Cal Kestis lightsaber for your own playthrough, check out the new Chaos X bundle from our sponsor, Onasaber.com. The Chaos X replicates Cal's lightsaber, which he acquired from Master Jaro Tapal, who was mortally wounded by blaster fire during Order 66. That incident actually damages Jaro's lightsaber, which you can see in the hilt of the Chaos X. The Chaos X is available in both standard RGB tube configuration or the pixel board configuration, which means, like this blade right here, you have a LED running alongside the length of the entire tube so that you can do all sorts of cool things like that. And if you guys are into sparring and really hitting these things hard, I do recommend you check out the standard RGB tube instead. Order the Chaos X for your playthrough of Jedi Survivor and you'll get the scabbard included for free as long as you purchase it in the bundle, which we'll link down in the description below. This is a time-limited special, so check it out. Thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. So Jedi Fallen Order takes place around 14 years before the Battle of Yavin. That's 5 years after the rise of the Empire in 19 BBY. The events that take place in Jedi Fallen Order last probably less than a year. And Jedi Survivor takes place around 5 years after the Fallen Order in 9 BBY. We know from pre-release information about the story, spoiler alert, that after escaping Vader from that underwater inquisitorial base, Cal Kestis stuck with his crew for a few years more and went on several missions, usually fighting against the Empire and its proxies. Then in around 11 BBY, Cal Kestis has a falling out with his companions, who include the Dathomiri Knights of Cimmerian, Grease Dritus, and Siri Junda. We're not sure what happened, but by 9 BBY, Cal Kestis must reunite with his companions to retake the fight to the Empire. So 14 BBY and 9 BBY, despite just being 5 years apart from each other, represent two distinct periods in Galactic Empire history. 14 BBY was still pretty much a transitional period for the Empire, and this was really well framed by that opening scene where we see Cal Kestis on Bracca breaking down those Venator-class Star Destroyers that were still being retired from service. It represents the Empire's continued reliance on Republic-era vessels, protocols, infrastructure, and bureaucracy. In 14 BBY, the newly minted Imperial-class Star Destroyer was only beginning to appear in the more important sector fleets in the galaxy. That same year, actually, Palpatine and Vader would journey to the Ryloth system to inspect the local Imperial garrison. While there, their Imperial-class Star Destroyer, the Perilous, would be taken out by Cham Syndulla using a handful of space mines and also old Separatist droid fighters. This would highlight the ISD's main flaw, a lack of point defense weapons, something that never truly gets fixed. And this is really how the Empire behaved during this period. A lot of great new designs, very little feedback, and so what you would ultimately end up with was a very large, impressive looking, but flawed military force. In 14 BBY, Vader would be in the middle of constructing his fortress on Mustafar, and Palpatine's other close advisor, Governor Wilhelm Tarkin, would be advising him on what fate would await the remaining Separatist holdouts in the Outer Rim. This was, after all, Tarkin's personal territory. He was the governor of the Outer Rim, and this would be a very important place in the galaxy during this time period, and it would experience a lot of great change. Tarkin would also be in charge of the Death Star program, which at this point has completed its frame, but we're still taking a look at how they're going to design the hyper-reactor core and the laser components. That has not been figured out yet by Galen Erso. In 14 BBY, the Empire still had an opportunity to change its course in history. Instead of focusing solely on security, it had a window of opportunity to prove that it could actually bring economic reform that could benefit the entire galaxy, much of which was still suffering from the aftermath of the Clone Wars. But the Imperial expansion period, as it would be known, focused instead on nationalizing resources, building factories and facilities like the one we see on Navarro, with the sole intent of providing materials and resources for the Imperial war machine and not the galactic economy. For people living in the core world, this period of time would be seen as the peak of Imperial power. The lack of war, or at least official war, being the biggest change that the Empire has brought to the galaxy since the Republic. The appearance of new ship designs and massive city-sized command vessels were exciting and drew the citizenry's attention away from decreasing wages and decreasing diversity in the job market. The Empire needed massive amounts of manpower for the mines, for its factories, to build its ships and to crew its ships. Motion, even if it's in the wrong direction, can be really soothing, especially to the galactic economy. But already the signs of dissent were appearing. The Crimson Dawn under Maul was steadily growing its network of spies and informants. Some of these agents were placed in the highest levels of Imperial command. We also begin to see more insurgency groups pop up and begin to communicate with one another, which of course is a huge problem. For instance, that coaxium that Solo helped Enfys Nest steal in 9 BBY, well, that eventually would be sold to the dangerous warlord known as Saw Gerrera. Now, these revolutionaries each had their own stories, their own agendas, their own homeworlds that they were driven away from, and there wasn't really a larger unification movement like the Alliance to Restore the Republic just yet, but there was definitely some intersectionality beginning to appear here. But soon, thousands of other systems will share these same grievances as these groups, as the Empire's demand for raw resources increase along with its security concerns. On worlds like Mimban, the Clone Wars never truly ended. Imperial mudtroopers and stormtroopers would engage in trench warfare against local insurgents. The amount of manpower and vehicles expended by the Empire to pacify this one relatively primitive world gives us a glimpse into just how overwhelmed the Empire will be in the future, and why it will eventually turn away from conventional military forces and use unconventional weapons like the Death Star to maintain control. Even in the heart of the Empire, you had individuals like Bail Organa, senator from Alderaan, quietly using his connections to create caches of weapons and vehicles for a future rebellion. He also has plenty of allies from his Republic Senate days, although a lot of these people are now pro-Imperial, public-facing. In private, they might have some concerns about the Empire and how Palpatine is running the galaxy. All except Mon Mothma, who is always hesitant to break the rules, but always willing to use the system properly to advocate for the rights of minority groups and investigate the Empire's military actions across the galaxy. She would continue to be a thorn in Emperor Palpatine's side for many years, although she would not achieve many results through her campaigning. As the Imperial Senate was pretty much a rubber stamp by this point, everything Palpatine wanted, he got. By 9 BBY, the Empire pretty much resembles the Empire that we would know in A New Hope. The Stormtrooper transformation will be finished, the Imperial Navy will be flying the TIE Fighter and Star Destroyers, Navigators, and V-Wings. And with most Separatist worlds pacified, it seems like long-lasting peace and order will finally reign over the galaxy. But as the last Separatist pockets disappear, internal domestic dissent also continues to grow. At the same time, the Empire tackles one of the Republic's biggest problems, and that is bringing economic development to the Outer Rim. The Empire's Outer Rim expansion plan, unlike the Republic's, didn't involve business-friendly policies, tax abatement, or the removal of tariffs and regulations. Instead, they continued to rely on the Imperial fleet and military-industrial complex to simultaneously pacify local populations and also suck up the local manpower for industrial production. The Imperial Registration Program promised to bring Outer Rim citizens into the Imperial fold, but this was really just a program to document all Imperial citizens for security and logistical reasons. Senior Fleet Systems, which during the Republic's reign was just a small boutique starship manufacturer, had landed a massive contract to build the future starship for the Empire. This would be known as the TIE Line Fighter. On the planet of Lothal, Senior Fleet Systems would establish a huge campus, taking advantage of the planet's plentiful durasteel and dunium and cheap Outer Rim labor. The Lothal factory was a part of a larger 5-year Imperial plan to turn the Outer Rim into a manufacturing center for the Imperial Navy. What instead happened was, as working conditions and wages shrank, was that local industry would be destroyed and replaced by terrible Imperial factory jobs that no one wanted. And so soon after, Imperial troopers were used to relocate farmers from their land, which were seized for mining purposes, and there were also reports of forced labor in Imperial mines and factories using these farmers. Laborers were commonly resettled into small temporary settlements, lovingly called Tarkin Town by its inhabitants. This was, of course, named after the governor of the Outer Rim. While the Imperial presence in the Outer Rim did decrease the amount of bandit raids and pirate attacks, we do see a rise in domestic insurgents who are trying to fight the Empire as it seizes resources and territory from sovereign planets. And remember guys, the Imperial government was only really concerned about political dissidents, Jedi, and other troublemakers that could threaten the legitimacy of Imperial rule. What they didn't actively go after were the criminal cartels that ran the galaxy's very lucrative black market. This is a second economy where you can find all sorts of weapons and vehicles, mostly untraceable, but also services for elite assassins and bounty hunters. The Empire at all levels, from the lowly garrison commander to Darth Vader himself, would commonly employ these criminal scum for operations deemed too sensitive or inappropriate for the Empire to be officially involved with. Some Imperial officers were on the take simply because they were very greedy. The Empire had close ties to the Hutts, who managed most of Hutt space and all shipments of spice in the area. You can be sure that almost every Imperial officer and border agent in the nearby areas were on the take. The Third Sister, on the other hand, would also hire thugs to capture the adopted daughter of Bail Organa in order to keep the Inquisitors' role in this covert action hidden. Speaking of Inquisitors, the Inquisitors, or Imperial Jedi Hunters, will return as major antagonists in Jedi Survivor. In the original game, Cal Kestis, as a Padawan, was not a very experienced duelist. He would, however, go on to face the Second Sister and Ninth Sister on numerous occasions and would improve his overall combat abilities and skills. But because the Inquisitors are a brutal organization and its members are constantly vying for favor from Darth Vader, the composition of this organization might be very different after 5 years. We know that in 9BBY that the Third Sister, the Fourth Sister, and the Fifth Brother, and the Grand Inquisitor himself will be hunting Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because of the Jedi's close relationship to Anakin Skywalker, he will remain a major priority for the group. We're not sure if the events of the Kenobi series take place before or after Jedi Survivor, but it definitely takes place in the same year. I believe that the Fifth Brother, based on what we see in Rebels series, which takes place about 4 years after this game, will be given more responsibilities and play a bigger role in hunting down Cal Kestis. However, Cal should be far more experienced than before and prove to be a much bigger challenge for the Inquisitors to take down, especially now that he is technically a Jedi Knight. So there you have it, guys. That is our breakdown of the state of the galaxy in 9BBY, which is when the Jedi Survivor takes place. Let me know in the comment section below what you're looking forward to most in this game. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy,